Writing songs for me is a process that is filled with a terror, really, because you just never know. Is it going to happen for you that day? Is the muse going to visit? Will there be inspiration when you need it? And rather than wait for the muse to visit, sometimes you've got to go out and, on a blind date and meet them halfway and hope that they turn up. That's what I did at 9 a.m. on January the 1st in 2013. I set myself that target weeks, months before. That would be day one of starting work to write a new album. The process of making the demos occurred a couple of months later after I had everything roughed out. I then spent a week's vacation time in Barbados, sitting in my hotel room, because I don't like to go out, because I might run into other guests and holiday makers. So I hide in my air-conditioned room for a week, and between reading a book or listening to the BBC World Service on the radio, because there's no television in the room there, I would have my little laptop computer and the same recording software as we use for recording the full Monty in the studio. But I had that with me and made some relatively crude demos, just with a little bit of whisper quiet vocals. You can't really sing and play out loud if you're in a hotel room. You're gonna antagonize your next door neighbors above, below, and either side. So this was all done by strumming a little guitar, going dee 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 dee, and then sending it off as an email attachment to the guys in the band, and hoping they could make sense of it and begin to write out their initial sketches for the form of all the different elements of music, and at that stage lyrics too, since that was all 95% in place by that point. Jethro is a man who's worked on various remixes and remasters of things over the years for various artists, like King Crimson particularly, for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and he was suggested as an alternative to Stephen Wilson, who was unable to work with us on this project due to a bout of overwork before Christmas, and so Jethro stepped into the breach and has been involved in the mixing of music that he's never heard until he got the master files, and so we spent some 10 days or so poring over all of that, sometimes with my going to his studio, sometimes and more often by firing back and forth 20-30 emails a day with various evolving incarnations of the mixing, so that at all stages I could have a little opportunity to say, change that, move that, do that. But you have to trust a mixing engineer to follow his own nose and come up with his own essential way of reading that music and bringing it alive for an audience. So it's a good combination of work practice, of having input but not crowding somebody too much and stifling their own creativity. One of the elements of the album, which clearly is set historically, but in near history, the time when I was a small child growing up, marked that point where people in my country, in Britain, began across the demographic divide to start to think about foreign travel, pretty much for the first time. Foreign travel had been the realm of opportunity for rich Victorians and other explorers who went off to do the sights of the world, but cost them an absolute fortune. And people began, particularly as the 60s dawned, to evaluate their holiday experience as a result of the package tour, the thing that was organised really where all they had to do was go to the travel agent, pay some money, and everything was taken care of. Spain, obviously a hugely popular resort for the Brits, France, other parts of near Europe. And that brought about not only a change in perception of how you should spend your holiday, but a change of perception about your neighbours, your people from other countries who spoke a different lingo, used a different currency, had different cultures and traditions. And I think it was quite an important time for British folks to realise that foreigners weren't just people that we were historically at war with. They were people who were literally our neighbours and with whom we had to begin that process of learning to share something of a common bond, which today, uneasy though that bond sometimes is a bond that is both economic and very much a cultural one with the countries of Europe and the UK, which of course plays its part in that bigger Europe. That's sort of what this album is about, really. It's about people going places, learning from the experience, evaluating something that you didn't know about before, and benefiting, hopefully, as a consequence. Making records, whilst ideally it's about all being in one place at the same time and playing together and recording it, and miraculously it's all done in half a day, that idea works to an extent, and worked for us both on Thick as a Brick and with Homo Erraticus too. But the recording process, from a technical standpoint, does require that certain things are kept in isolation from an audio point of view. I mean, I can't sit in a room with a loud drummer playing, crash bang wallop and an open microphone and sing my part or play a flute, without it producing a pretty unsavory sonic result. So things like that have to be overdubbed, which is why we use multi-track recording, where we get all the main ingredients played pretty much live in the room. But as always, even though I may have rehearsed it singing and playing live with the band so they know what the whole song's about, when it comes to the actual real recording of my parts, it has to happen in isolation as an overdub. During rehearsals, I'm kind of on the case, standing out there with them all the time. We're a band or a unit as we would be on stage, and everybody's doing their bits kind of live during rehearsal. But in the recording process, I'm in the control room, and over the years, historically, they're sitting with an engineer, or engineering and producing it alone on the case of more recent albums. Not only was Ryan not available to join in on the band photos, but he was not available to do his bit of vocal work on the album. So back in London, Ryan was in my son James's studio doing his vocal overdubs to the tracks that were sitting on James's computer in London. So Ryan went in to sing his bits, and again, they can be sent to me 10 minutes later by email attachment, and I can evaluate it and say, well, how about just changing that, or do it this way, and so it can be quickly redone and resent. I always try to give the guys the head in coming up with the essential parts, and quite often I don't really end up interfering very much at all. They've got all the chords, they've got the flow of the music and the basic arrangement. What they play, which inversion they play, what little additional, more decorative line they might introduce, I like them to come up with their own ideas, and usually they have some ideas. But it's about working together, not just me with individuals, but collectively, because sometimes you got to stop and say, well, if I play this, how's that going to affect the bass line? How's that going to affect the guitar chord, which may be a different inversion of the same chord, but you might want to make sure deliberately you do that, or maybe you want to use the same inversion with the same root note in the same place at the bottom of the chord. Or you've got to make these choices. So everybody has to pay attention and work together and try to find the detail in the parts that makes most sense, not just for you as a player, but for the other people you're playing with. People I'm working with now, I think, have the broad abilities from jazz through to classical music. None of them are actually what I would call from the folk tradition. None of them are really particularly into ethnic music, the broader and more historical cultural music of the world, which interests me a great deal as an acoustic musician. But from classical music to jazz and to rock, they bring their own different ingredients into the mix, and they've all managed to cross boundaries in terms of their own playing style, and hopefully their own developing interest in music, because for a couple of the guys to do something that's more of a rock album like this is not something that they've spent most of their lives doing up to this point. The good guys right now for me to work with, and they're free to move on and find new challenges in life as they turn up, and then, like people before them, they will have to be replaced. But it's not a callous and cold-hearted procedure. It's the way things evolve. You don't necessarily get to work with the same team all the time, however much you might like them. Everybody's got to be feeling free that they do it because they want to do it, and it suits them for now. It's been a difficult journey to take, given that it has to be taken over a finite period of time. Moments when I get filled with self-doubt, not doubting the other guy's performance, but in my own, and it's something you really have to work hard at. So getting to the end of it is a great feeling of relief, but there's also the buzz that comes a day or two later, or at most a week or two later, when you know the next thing you're going to do is actually perform this music live to an audience. And that's really what it's all about. Ultimately, it's about the personal communication of the music one-to-one in a real concert environment, and that's the payoff ultimately for all the hours, the days, the weeks of hard work in putting it all together. So end of a phase one, and a little hiatus before phase two, which is the bit where we get hot and sweaty.